feeling. Now let's talk about how food is the problem. Food is the problem because there's so much of it. There's constant access and there's a ton of convenient ways to get it. And the only boundaries that we have are the ones that we create. And we're not going to create great boundaries when we come at it from a place of scarcity. So constant access to food, hyper palatable foods, that's foods that are created to really stimulate our brains and have a mixture of, sweet and salty. They kind of trick the brain a little bit. So hyperpalatable foods, convenience foods, they contribute to the problem. But if you weren't feeling that there was a lack or something missing, you wouldn't be seeking to fill the void with food in the first place. So in both examples, you can see how it's the scarcity mindset, this feeling of lack that's underneath. And overeating is just a symptom, not the cause. Now take a moment and check in with yourself and see if this mindset is resonating with you before we go on into the others. I'd like to add that diets, they add fuel to the scarcity fire. This is why they are always a temporary solution. What do diets tell you to do? Restrict calories. Limit what foods you can eat and how much that you can eat. That's the focus of diets. Well, when you already feel like there's a lack, diets just give evidence to that lack. It confirms it. And this makes the feelings of discomfort worse. So is it really any surprise that diets don't produce a permanent solution? They're a superficial tool. And they not only don't address the deeper reasons behind weight gain, but they perpetuate the scarcity mindset, which is one of the roots of it. Secret mindset number 2 is wanting to be invisible, wanting to avoid attention. The secret mindset is really common. With this mindset, there's a belief that by being overweight, it's like wearing an invisibility cloak. For all you Harry Potter lovers out there, it's like wearing an invisibility cloak. And I've heard countless clients tell me about how having extra weight made them feel safer because they attracted less attention. Some clients have shared with me that holding extra weight felt like a protective padding, almost like a barrier or a boundary between them and other people. So it can serve as a barrier to intimacy. And you might think, who would want to have a barrier to intimacy? But it's actually really common. There's plenty of reasons for that. Fear of rejection is a big one. There's some dynamic within the relationship that can cause a barrier to intimacy. Body shame is another big one. So wanting to avoid attention, wanting to be invisible, feeling safer, behind the boundary of extra weight, this mindset is a common mindset that prevents permanent weight release. Let me ask you a couple of questions, and this is not to share as a group, this is just for you to check in with yourself. Do you feel unsafe or less safe when people pay attention to you? Do you find yourself not wanting to be noticed? Feeling uncomfortable when you're being noticed? Is your extra weight making people take less notice of you? Check in and see what feels true for you. Going into the secret mindset a little more deeply, in my experience and in my research, people who are sexual trauma survivors often feel more protected when they carry extra weight. Clients who are sexual trauma survivors have told me different reasons for this. One is that they feel like if they're less attractive, they won't draw attention. They won't be as desirable, and it makes them feel more safe Whether this is true or not, it can feel true, and it can be a mindset that undermines permanent weight release, because the need to feel safe is going to be in conflict with releasing weight and feeling more visible. So notice if this is something that you might be doing. Does this mindset spark with you? The undeserving mindset is next up on the list and goes very deep for some of you. Believing that you're fundamentally flawed, that there's something wrong with you. This mindset can sabotage everything. And this mindset is so common in humans, not just people seeking to release weight. It's like there's this constant tape playing that you're not good enough, you're broken in some way, you're guilty of something, you don't have any willpower. There's some overlap here with a scarcity mindset. It's a different flavor, but when you feel undeserving, it's often because you believe you're missing something that would make you worthy. So there's that void again. For those of you who are struggling with this undeserving mindset, there's often a guilt around eating, especially if you're already overweight. You feel like you don't deserve to eat. And there's a lot of shame around food and eating. Is this something that you do? Are these feelings that you can relate to? You can feel free to post in the chat if you'd like to share. So these mindsets don't just affect what you're thinking about yourself on a daily basis. They affect how you feel about yourself, and they affect what you do, your behaviors. So I'm going to go through some examples so you can see the ways that this could be showing up in your life. The most common examples I've witnessed are overeating, and this is in an attempt to fill the void, remain invisible, or as a punishment for not being deserving of better. Another example is justifying unhealthy behaviors. Let's say it's eating low quality processed foods. And I actually used to do this. I was coming from a place of lack at that time in my life. And I remember buying processed junk food from the store. Pot pies, frozen pizza, packaged desserts, frozen eclairs. And I would justify it by saying that it was so cheap to eat that way, or that I was so busy with school and working after school, so I deserved to eat that way. I was justifying it. But it didn't change that those things were horrible for my body. An example of behavior that can come from the wanting to be invisible or undeserving mindset is eating by yourself, secretive eating. Not wanting people to see what you're eating, how much you're eating, or how quickly you're eating. Here's one you can probably relate to. Rationalizing. So rationalizing overeating, poor food choices with special occasions, like, hey, it's a Tuesday and I'm going out with friends after work. We can always make up a special occasion. And we most often do this when we feel a sense of lack or feel like there's a void. Inconsistency with food is another example of how the secret mindsets affect your behavior. When these mindsets are present, it's like there's a current that's flowing in the background, but there's an ebb and a flow to the feelings. And they come up when we feel that lack or the desire to be invisible or feel undeserving. This is why sometimes you can feel like you've got this, that you're focused on releasing weight and you're having some success with it. But then at other times, you don't feel any of those things. And everything that you were doing to release weight just goes out the window. This leads to inconsistent behavior and, not surprisingly, inconsistent results. And it's because of these mindsets being present in the back of your mind. There's an ebb and a flow. And when there's an ebb, you feel stronger. And when there's a flow, you feel less capable.